Hi. I'm Venus Blackwell, event planner, eldest daughter, professional fixer. And last month, my sister told me I wasn't worthy of attending the wedding I designed. Not uninvited. Erased. And what came next? It wasn't heartbreak. It was war. Now press play. The text arrived between slides of a corporate deck I had been polishing for days. My laptop hummed softly, the cursor blinking on the line that read, "Finalize Seraphine's seating chart." My phone buzzed beside my coffee cup, and I almost didn't look. But then her name appeared, my sister's, and the preview froze me mid-breath. "Don't come. This isn't your place. You don't belong in that crowd." For a second, I thought it was a joke. We teased like that once, back when sarcasm meant affection. But the words sat heavy, sterile. I read them again, and again, until my chest felt hollow. I had faced worse, clients canceling at the last minute, venues flooding hours before a gala, but this was different. This wasn't professional failure. This was personal exile. My fingers shook against the keyboard. The monitor blurred. I could hear the faint roll of the Pacific outside my apartment window, the same rhythm that usually steadied me. Not tonight. Tonight it sounded like applause for someone else's success. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. I'd spent 3 months planning Seraphine's wedding, booked the florist she wanted, negotiated her dream venue, made sure the lighting would make her skin glow under candlelight. And now, I wasn't even allowed to show up. I whispered into the empty room, "Not forgotten. Erased." The word lingered like smoke. That evening, I drove home along the coast, headlights catching the slick shine of rain. The mailbox outside my apartment was stuffed, one envelope thicker than the rest. It carried my mother's neat handwriting, that looping cursive she used for birthday cards and reprimands. I tore it open standing in the hallway. Inside lay a printed form, wedding contribution package. Gold tier, $5,000 donation, acknowledgement on the wedding website, mention in speeches. No greeting. No invitation. I laughed, quietly, sharply. It startled even me. They'd erased me from the guest list but kept my name on the expense sheet. The paper felt heavier than its weight, slick and impersonal. I placed it on the counter beside the RSVP card that had never arrived. For a long moment, I watched them lie side by side, one absent, one demanding. "They uninvited me from the table," I murmured, "but they still want me to pay for the wine." My reflection in the kitchen window stared back, tired and pale under the overhead light. I thought of calling my mother, demanding an explanation. But I already knew what she'd say, "Don't make everything about you, Venus." Later, I walked past my hallway corkboard, the one filled with fabric swatches and sketches from the wedding plan I'd created. Forest green ribbons, samples of ivory lace, calligraphy drafts of Seraphine's name paired with her fiancé's. I traced the edge of a swatch labeled bridesmaid wrap. I was supposed to wear that color. I had once imagined standing beside her, smiling for photos we'd framed for decades. Now those same images would exist without me. My mind slipped backward to a night years ago, Seraphine at 15, sobbing after her first heartbreak, hair tangled across her pillow. I had brushed it smooth, reading Rumi aloud from a borrowed book. "One day, you'll find someone who loves you louder than your pain," I'd told her. She had smiled through tears, whispering, "You're my loudest love." The memory stung now, like pressing on a bruise. I whispered into the silence, "I did love you louder. And you still threw me away." The apartment creaked in the stillness. I folded the fabric sample between my palms, feeling its soft edges. Healing never comes fast, it unfolds slowly, gently, like this fabric sliding through my fingers. Near midnight, I sat at my desk, light from the screen cutting through the dim room. I typed a message to Seraphine. "You don't owe me gratitude. But erasing me like this, it's cowardly." I stared at the words, then deleted them one by one until the screen went blank. No satisfaction, no relief. Just quiet. Instead, I opened a travel site. The cursor blinked in the search bar. Los Angeles, Maui. A direct flight glowed at the top of the page, departure this weekend. I imagined the plane leaving the coast behind, slicing through clouds toward a place that didn't know my name. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. My hand hovered over the mouse. I thought of my mother's face at Christmas, the careful politeness she wore like perfume. Family comes first, she always said, though I was rarely included in her definition. A soft breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the faint scent of salt and eucalyptus. It calmed me, gently, quietly. Healing doesn't always roar, sometimes it just whispers, go. I clicked book flight. On the desk, the printed contribution form curled at the edges, a useless relic of belonging. I placed my passport on top of it, weighing it down, as if claiming ownership of something again, my future, maybe. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully. The sound filled the small room like a confession. They're expecting silence, I said softly. I'll give them absence. The words didn't feel like surrender. They felt like a beginning, small, steady, deliberate. I turned off the light, leaving the envelope in shadow. Outside, the waves kept their rhythm, and somewhere in that steady motion, I felt my heartbeat start to match it, slower, stronger, ready. The morning after I booked the ticket, sunlight spilled through the blinds, harsh and too honest. I brewed coffee I didn't drink and stared at the wall clock until the seconds felt like accusations. Pasadena was only 40 minutes away, but it might as well have been another country. Still, something inside me said I had to go, collect what was left, clear the space that still tethered me to them. I drove in silence, the freeway shimmering ahead. My mother's house appeared the same as it always had, a pale stucco shell with roses manicured to perfection. She believed appearances fixed everything. The gate creaked as I entered, and the smell of lemon cleaner drifted out before I even reached the porch. Inside, the air was thick, sterile, almost medical. The stillness had its own weight. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of my own heartbeat. I hadn't been here in years, yet every sound was familiar enough to hurt. Her voice called faintly from upstairs, "Venus? Is that you?" "It's me," I answered, softly, as if volume could reopen old wounds. I wasn't here for conversation. Just for boxes. For closure. The living room walls were lined with photographs, the family gallery that once proved we belonged to each other. I stopped midway through the hall. Something looked off. The frames hung evenly spaced, dusted, perfect, but each photo carried a small wound. My image was missing. Not torn by accident, cut. Clean, deliberate incisions where my face used to be. In a beach picture, my shoulder was visible beside Seraphine's smile, but my head was gone. At my college graduation, only the cap tassel remained, dangling in air. The breath left my body. I reached toward one, fingertips hovering just shy of the frame. The edges were sharp, tiny slivers where scissors had sliced through. "They didn't bury me," I whispered. "They unframed me." I felt dizzy, my pulse rising behind my ribs. I didn't cry. I just stood there, the way you stand in front of a grave you didn't know existed until you tripped over it. Her footsteps approached, light but steady. "You should have called first," my mother said. I needed to pick up my things. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. She adjusted a frame that didn't need adjusting. "Your boxes are in the basement. Try not to make a mess." "I won't." We avoided eye contact, but silence can say what words won't. Hers said, "You did this to yourself." Mine said, "No, you did." I went downstairs. The basement smelled like cardboard and old detergent. Dust danced in the sunlight that slipped through the tiny window. Against one wall sat a row of labeled boxes, holiday decor, Seraphine's trophies, Dad's books, Venus, college. My name, fading in blue marker. I knelt, lifting the lid. Inside were fragments of someone I used to be, a flyer from my first event planning job, the corners bent, a birthday card and signed but unmistakably my father's handwriting, a scrapbook I'd made when I was 12. Its tape had yellowed. Some pages stuck together. I peeled one open carefully. A school recital program. My name printed under, solo performance. The photograph beneath it, where I once stood smiling in a too large dress, was gone. Cut out neatly, like the others. The scissors had been thorough. I closed the book slowly, quietly, tenderly, as though handling remains. Upstairs, I heard the faint vibration of my phone. I wiped my hands on my jeans and checked it. A message from Aunt Cassie, the only relative who ever dared speak truth. I asked why you weren't invited. They said I was stirring trouble. They removed me from the family chat group. Attached was a screenshot, group name, Cruise Legacy Line. My name wasn't visible anywhere. Cassie's final message before removal read, "Stop rewriting history. She deserves respect." Her new text followed, "You're better than this circus, baby. But I hate that they're pretending you never mattered." I read it twice. My throat tightened, but no tears came. I typed back only one word, thank you. When I reached the top of the stairs, my mother was waiting near the doorway, arms folded. Leaving already? Yes. You could stay for dinner, she said flatly, like an obligation. I'm not hungry. She looked at me the way she looks at an unfinished chore. You know, Seraphine didn't mean to hurt you. You always take things too personally. I was cut out of family photos. Her expression didn't flicker. Sometimes distance keeps peace. That's one word for it. I picked up the scrapbook, the one missing my picture. Do you even see how cruel this is? Cruel, she repeated, adjusting a vase that didn't need adjusting. Cruel is embarrassing your family in front of others. You chose that path when you kept questioning everything. I felt a tremor in my hands, small but rising. Questioning lies isn't cruelty. Watch your tone, she warned, quiet but sharp. You sound just like your father when he was impossible. The mention of him hit harder than I expected. He's gone, I said softly. I only sound like myself. Her silence was a dismissal. Some families weaponize quiet more effectively than words. I walked to the door, the scrapbook pressed to my chest. The air outside was cooler, honest. The sky was a pale blue that looked almost forgiving. In the car, I opened the book again, flipping to the back. The last page held a laminated poem, written in childish handwriting. When I grow up, I'll be something bright. Not the shadow that hides in light. I traced each letter slowly. The corners were curling, but the ink held. Even after all these years, those words still belonged to me. I placed the poem on the passenger seat and started the engine. My phone buzzed once more, another message from Cassie. Drive safe. I'm proud of you for walking out. I smiled faintly. Me too, I whispered. The road ahead shimmered in sunlight, and for the first time, leaving didn't feel like loss. It felt like air returning to lungs long deprived. Healing doesn't rush, it arrives softly, gently, step by step. The freeway stretched ahead, shimmering under a pale haze, the kind of light that makes everything look like memory. By the time I pulled into my building's parking lot, the air had turned heavier, full of the ocean salt and the faint smell of asphalt. I carried only the scrapbook from my mother's house, its missing photos like open wounds, and set it on the kitchen table beside my half-packed suitcase. I stood for a while, not moving, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. The quiet felt almost alive, pressing in around me. The ticket to Maui waited in my inbox. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving. Not my mother. Not Seraphine. Not even Aunt Cassie, though she'd understand. I opened my phone. The group text blinked with unread messages, cruise family chat. My finger hovered above it, then I tapped. Seraphine had sent a picture of champagne glasses clinking, captioned, rehearsal dinner prep, followed by another, don't worry, she'll be in Hawaii journaling her feelings, that's her idea of rebellion. Then, oops, wrong group. I laughed quietly, the kind that hurts more than crying. The air inside the apartment seemed thinner. They weren't embarrassed, they were proud of the joke. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. It wasn't a mistake. It was a performance. I took a screenshot and saved it into a folder on my laptop labeled Receipts. My heart no longer raced when they mocked me. I had grown too used to being their punchline. What surprised me was the strange calm that followed, the quiet acceptance that I was done trying to belong. I walked to the closet. The suitcase sat open, half full. I added only what I needed, jeans, white shirts, a notebook. No jewelry. Nothing sentimental. I zipped it shut, the sound neat and final. My laptop chimed. An email from my mother. Venus, we'll need the final payment to the caterer by Thursday. Seraphine can reimburse you after the wedding. Don't make things difficult. I typed a reply, then erased it. My hand trembled once, then steadied. They'd spent years mistaking my silence for weakness. Maybe that was my fault for letting them. I whispered, I'm not your checkbook. The room felt lighter after I said it out loud, softly, like an incantation. Healing happens quietly, step by step, one boundary at a time. By Friday morning, fog rolled over Venice Beach, the kind that blurs everything beyond a few feet. I locked the door behind me and wheeled my suitcase to the curb. The air carried the faint metallic smell of rain, but none came. The world was holding its breath. At the airport, the terminal buzzed with voices and the sharp scent of coffee. I moved through security without speaking. Every motion felt deliberate, taking off my shoes, lifting the laptop from the bag, placing it back again. I had always been the one to plan, to control details. Now I wanted none of it. I sat near my gate and stared at the glass wall. Beyond it, a plane lifted into gray sky, vanishing into clouds that looked like bruises. The sound of engines vibrated through the floor. It reminded me of the times I helped Seraphine rehearse her speeches, feeding her lines she'd later recite as if they were her own. "Remember to thank the people who believed in you," I'd told her before her high school graduation. Now I watched another flight climb and thought, no one to thank. No one to prove anything to. The loudspeaker crackled, boarding call to Maui. My row. I rose slowly. Healing doesn't rush, it waits until you choose it. As I handed over my ticket, my phone buzzed. A new message. My mother again. "I hope you're satisfied. You've ruined the mood for everyone." Seraphine is trying to stay positive, but she's embarrassed. Families are supposed to support each other. I almost laughed. The word support sounded foreign coming from her. I put the phone face down on the counter while the attendant scanned my boarding pass. "Vacation or business?" the woman asked. "Neither," I said. "Reset." She smiled politely. "That sounds nice." I walked down the jet bridge, the air cool against my skin. The plane smelled of coffee, metal, and possibility. I took a window seat, pressed my forehead against the glass, and watched rain begin to streak the pane in diagonal lines. The seat beside me stayed empty. I didn't want company anyway. As the plane taxied, another vibration from my phone. "Aunt Cassie, proud of you. Keep going." I placed it face down again, not because I didn't care, but because I wanted to remember this feeling, of quiet, of control. The plane accelerated, the ground pulling away in one smooth motion. Buildings turned small, then disappeared under cloud. The coastline thinned, curling into distance. I thought about my sister's laughter, my mother's cold logic, the faces missing from photographs. I let them drift from me like small paper boats caught in wind. Running would have meant I was afraid. I wasn't. I was reclaiming air, breath by breath. The hum of the engines deepened, steady and sure. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family's invisible scaffolding. I felt like my own foundation. I closed my eyes and whispered to no one, "I'm flying because I finally remember I can." The words rested gently on my tongue, a promise more than a declaration. Somewhere below, the Pacific shimmered silver under clouds, stretching wide enough to hold everything I was leaving behind. The first thing I noticed was the color of the light. Maui sunlight had a different honesty, warm, forgiving, but never pretending. I sat on a wooden chair near the shore, the waves folding into themselves softly, the way breath evens out after too many held-in words. I let the sand bury my toes and kept my phone on the table beside my drink, screen down. When it buzzed, I didn't move. I already knew who it was. My mother's voice spilled through the voicemail icon, that high-strung panic that had raised me more than her love ever did. "Venus, the flowers are wrong. The menus came late. The guests are asking for you. Where are you? Your sister is falling apart." I didn't play it. I didn't delete it either. The waves took the sound instead, washing over the guilt she'd carefully trained me to feel. I watched the horizon stretch wide and steady, and for the first time, her voice sounded small against it. I sipped the pineapple juice. It was sweet, almost too sweet. Freedom often is at first, rich, unfamiliar, something you sip carefully so you don't drown in it. I thought about the wedding. The white chairs I'd chosen, the gold trim she'd approved, the music playlist that still lived in my laptop. Somewhere in Los Angeles, all of it was happening without me, unraveling without the hands that had built it. Quietly, gently, I let that realization settle. By afternoon, the phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, new texts. I turned it over and scanned the notifications. "Mom, the seating chart is a mess." "Seraphine, we can't find the playlist, can you send it?" "Mom again, why would you do this to your sister?" A dozen messages stacked like accusations. I opened Instagram instead. Cousin Erin had posted a photo of the reception hall. The caption read, "Half the names are misspelled. Guess it's what happens when you cut the planner." Another story flashed up, Seraphine in her gown, makeup smeared, eyes glassy. Someone had written, "Wedding meltdown level 9. I should have felt pity. What I felt was something quieter, deeper, like relief wearing a disguise. I took screenshots, stored them in the receipts folder on my phone. Old habits die efficiently. A final text appeared from my mother. Can you at least tell us where the playlist is saved? We're scrambling. I typed one emoji, a mirror. Sent it. Because that's what I'd been for them all along, a reflection they could edit, brighten, crop. Not anymore. The sunset that evening was soft gold bleeding into pink. I ate dinner alone at the hotel cafe, the air filled with the smell of grilled pineapple and sea salt. Around me, couples clinked glasses, servers laughed, someone's child squealed at the sound of a ukulele. My phone buzzed again, this time with a video link from a number I didn't know. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped it open. A woman's voice, blurred by laughter. She planned the whole thing but got cut at the end. Guess she was just the bank, not the bride. Laughter roared over the words, loud and sharp. Someone added, some people just don't know their place. The camera panned briefly, my sister, red-eyed, forcing a smile. Wine glasses glittered under chandeliers. I paused the video. The light from the screen painted my face a ghostly white. My reflection stared back, calm but hollowed out. My hand trembled once, then steadied on the table. I whispered to myself, I didn't want their spotlight. But they won't sell my light to someone else. I turned off the phone and sat there, listening to the ocean press against the shore. The sound was steady, patient, like something ancient reminding me I had survived worse than words. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my hotel room. The sky was ink dark, full of stars that didn't care who won or lost tonight. I opened my laptop, the same one that held every detail of the wedding, and stared at the screen. For a long time, I didn't type. Then, slowly, I opened a new document and titled it Notes for Later. My fingers hovered above the keys, and I wrote 3 words. I saw everything. The words glowed against the white background. They weren't a threat, they were a record. I closed the computer and reached for my notebook instead. The paper smelled faintly of salt. I wrote the same words again by hand, slower, letting the ink bleed slightly into the page. Outside, laughter drifted from the bar below, carried by the wind. It didn't sting this time. It sounded distant, like a world that had once belonged to me but no longer did. I thought about Seraphine's face in that video, the way she smiled even while drowning. Maybe she didn't know any other way to live. I almost pitied her. Almost. When I finally went to bed, I left the balcony door open. The ocean breathed in and out like something alive, reminding me that endings don't always need witnesses. My phone lit up one last time on the nightstand. Another voicemail, my mother's voice cracking now. Venus, please. She's crying. The photographer cancelled. Your father's side is whispering. You're the only one who can fix this. I let it play until the message ended. Then I whispered into the dark, not anymore. Healing doesn't arrive suddenly. It comes softly, step by step, until one day you realize the guilt doesn't fit you anymore. They thought I had walked out quietly. They thought the house still stood without me. But the truth settled gently in my chest as sleep found me. They think I left the house. They don't know I burned it down first. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, soft but insistent. I sat up slowly, the ocean murmuring somewhere beyond the balcony. For the first time in days, my phone was silent. No calls, no texts. The wedding storm had passed, leaving only the kind of quiet that follows destruction. I made coffee in the small hotel room and opened my laptop, planning to check work messages. But the first email waiting wasn't about business. The subject line read, Title Change Notification, Los Angeles County Registrar. I frowned, thinking it must be spam. Then I saw the property address. The house on Morningside Avenue. My childhood home. The one I'd refinanced during Mom's health scare 3 years ago when the medical bills piled up. My stomach tightened as I clicked. The screen loaded, slow and cruel. Then it appeared, my name, gone. In its place, Seraphine Cruz. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. They'd transferred the title. No call. No permission. Just a transaction, neat as a knife cut. I scrolled through the legal jargon, each word hitting like small stones, beneficiary reassignment. Owner consent recorded. My name was nowhere. They didn't just take walls and paint, I whispered. They deleted my history and stamped hers over it. I closed the laptop gently, afraid it might scream if I slammed it. The coffee had gone cold. My pulse echoed in my ears, steady but rising. How many times had I fixed that roof? How many weekends had I scraped old paint from its porch, believing one day I'd inherit more than debt. It wasn't just property. It was proof I'd been part of something, proof that now belonged to someone else. I opened my phone, needing a distraction, but instead found insult. A bridesmaid, Cressida, had tagged Seraphine in a new post. Obsessed with this dreamy setup Seraphine designed. Her creative vision is unmatched. The picture showed the wedding arch, an asymmetrical frame of orchids and wild roses, identical to the one from my sketches. Even the font on the menus matched my file labeled, Wedding Typography, Final. I enlarged the photo. There, beneath the caption, Seraphine had commented a single heart emoji. No mention of me. Not even a thank you. My face warmed, that slow heat of humiliation that starts in the chest and spreads outward. I didn't comment, didn't send a message. Instead, I took screenshots, every post, every tag, and emailed them to myself with a new subject line, Exhibit A. Each click steadied my pulse. Anger became focus. Betrayal became documentation. Quietly, methodically, I attached 17 images and saved the thread. I whispered, "You wanted a silent witness? You'll get a record keeper." The line came out steadier than I expected. Later that afternoon, I walked along the shoreline. The sand was warm underfoot, soft, forgiving. The sea moved the way time does, back and forth, but always forward. In that rhythm, I let myself remember. Flashback, Seraphine standing in my apartment 2 years ago, asking for help with the house refinance. "Mom's terrified we'll lose it," she'd said, eyes wide and watery. "You're the only one who can fix this." I'd said yes without hesitation. Of course I did. Family, right? Now, that memory tasted bitter, like wine left open too long. I sat on a rock near the surf and pulled out my phone. I opened the digital wedding brochure I had designed myself. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Every vendor, every contact, every logistical note, all credited to Seraphine. A line at the bottom glared in white font against beige background. This event would not have been possible without Seraphine's unparalleled taste and organization. My breath caught in my throat. That sentence, word for word, was the one I'd drafted months ago, for myself. I copied it, pasted it into a blank document, and typed beneath it. Amendments, for legal review. Back in the hotel, the air conditioner hummed as I spread papers across the small desk. Receipts, contracts, invoices, all with my signature. Each one a small proof that I existed in this story they were trying to rewrite. I took photos, labeled each file carefully, dated and timestamped. It wasn't vengeance. It was order. I booked an appointment with a remote notary service for the next morning. My fingers shook once, briefly, then steadied. I was done letting other people define me. When the call connected the following day, the notary's face appeared on screen, middle-aged, polite, unaware that she was witnessing reclamation. She asked, "Purpose of document?" "Affidavit of contribution," I replied. My voice sounded even, detached. "I'm documenting what I built." She nodded, scanning her checklist. "You understand this will be a public record?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's the point." As I signed the digital form, the weight in my chest shifted, not gone but different, like carrying something I finally recognized as mine. When the meeting ended, I sat still for a long time, watching sunlight move across the floor. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. "I heard you've been digging around. Let it go, Venus. Families don't take each other to court." I typed back, "Families don't steal from each other either." Then I erased it before sending. Some truths didn't need replies, they needed witnesses. I closed my laptop and whispered into the quiet, "You wanted silence. You'll get clarity." Outside, the sky turned the color of honey. Waves shimmered in the distance, patient and endless. They had taken my work, my home, my name, but not my proof. And proof, when handled carefully, is stronger than inheritance. Healing doesn't roar, it rebuilds quietly, piece by piece, like documents lined up in order, waiting for the right light. They wanted a silent witness. They got a documentarian. By the 4th day after the wedding, the air in Maui felt different. Not lighter. Just clearer. Like everything had settled, including the mess behind me. My hotel room still smelled like printer ink and jasmine from the lobby diffuser. The stack of documents on the desk had grown thicker than I expected. Proof takes up space. So does silence, once you fill it with names, dates, and signatures. I was finishing a basic work invoice, unrelated, impersonal, when the forwarded email came in. The subject read, Wedding Gratitude Announcement. From Seraphine's assistant, sent to a family-wide list I hadn't seen in weeks. I opened it slowly, like peeling back a bandage. There they were, the caterer's name, the florist, the DJ who I'd booked and paid the deposit for. The graphic designer Seraphine had never met. Even the cake decorator who cancelled twice and whom I had convinced to return. Everyone was listed. Everyone but me. My name wasn't forgotten. It had been surgically removed. I stared at the screen, unmoving. No eye roll. No muttered curses. Just that quiet tightening in my chest that always came when dignity met dismissal. You can't erase what built the foundation. But you can pretend it didn't have a name. I closed the email without replying. I didn't forward it. I didn't cry. I just sat back in my chair and let my breath settle. Gently. Quietly. Like setting something fragile on a shelf you won't touch again. I powered up the external hard drive I'd brought from LA. The folder Cruise Wedding 2024 opened instantly. Dozens of subfolders waited inside, each one labeled like chapters of a book no one wanted to read. Venue contracts. Menu designs. Guest list versions 1 through 7. Vendor receipts. This wasn't just backup. It was the blueprint of a lie. I opened the spreadsheet. It had 3 columns. Item. Cost. Evidence. Each row brought back a memory, some sharp, some numb. The rental chairs I negotiated down by $2,000. The custom playlist I finalized in bed at 2 a.m. The Pinterest board Seraphine copied and pasted into a press release. I printed everything. The hotel printer groaned under the weight, spitting out page after page. I stacked them methodically. No staples. No highlights. Just plain, clean paper with my name at the bottom of every invoice. Proof didn't need color. It needed clarity. At noon, I met the mobile notary in the hotel cafe. She wore a floral blouse and asked me to verify my ID twice, like I might be pretending to be the woman whose name they'd erased. I handed over the folder, Affidavit of Contribution and Intellectual Property. Inside, every email. Every contract. Every transfer. This is for what, exactly, she asked. I kept my voice low. Just a record. For now. She nodded, professional, detached. No court filing yet? Not yet. She notarized every page. No questions, no drama. It felt like nothing and everything at once. I signed the last page, and something inside me clicked into place. Not loudly. Not defiantly. Just firmly. I'm not yelling. I'm documenting. They were loud with their dismissal. I'll be louder in court filings. Later that evening, I stood in the business center, scanning the notarized pages to a secure folder. The lighting was cold and flat, humming overhead like an old argument. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Mom. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 4 times. Then answered. Venus, she said. No hello. Just urgency wrapped in fatigue. Yes? I kept my tone even. Can we just talk? You're escalating this beyond reason. I smiled without humor. Reason was when I sent you that final invoice. You ignored it. She was quiet for a beat. This is family, she said finally. Like a warning. Like an alibi. No, I said. This was always a business. You just didn't expect the bill. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was calculation. She was wondering who else I'd sent the files to. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I have to go, I said. Venus, don't. I hung up. I placed the last scanned document into the cloud folder labeled, Redemption. They trained me to serve. They forgot I also learned how to protect. I left the business center without looking back. That night, I slept with the windows open. The breeze slipped over my skin like breath. Soft. Undeniable. Healing doesn't ask permission. It arrives on its own time, at its own pace. And sometimes, it carries a folder. The morning after the notary signed the final page, I woke to the sound of waves brushing against the shore below my window. For a few seconds, I stayed there, eyes half open, letting the rhythm fill the room, that slow pull and release that had once meant safety. The same sound that used to lull me to sleep on childhood summers when the world still felt simple. For the first time in years, the ocean didn't feel distant. It felt like witness. Then the phone rang. The vibration crawled across the nightstand until it reached the edge, buzzing against a pen, rattling softly like it wanted to be noticed. I didn't have to check the screen. I already knew who it was. I answered on the fourth ring. Mom. Her voice came through, syrup-sweet, deliberate. The kind of sweetness she reserved for strangers, hotel clerks, cashiers, bank tellers, anyone she wanted something from. Venus, honey, we're family. Let's not turn this into something ugly. I stood by the window, the ocean stretching wide beneath me. Then you shouldn't have forged my name off the deed. Silence. Long enough that I could hear the waves again. Long enough to know she was deciding which tone to use next. When she finally spoke, the honey had curdled. It was for the good of the family estate. No, I said quietly, voice flat. It was for the convenience of your favorite. Watch your words, Venus, she snapped. You're talking about your sister. I know exactly who I'm talking about. Her sigh came heavy, practiced, the weary exhale of someone pretending she's tired of the fight when, in truth, she needs the conflict to feel alive. You've always made things so difficult. You never understood sacrifice. I almost laughed. It came out as a breath instead. You taught me sacrifice, Mom. I just stopped volunteering for it. Before she could speak again, I ended the call. The silence that followed didn't ache. It gleamed, sharp, clean, almost bright. Later that morning, I found myself at the small cafe on the hotel's ground floor. The kind of place that smelled like burnt espresso and salt air. I opened my laptop again. Something gnawed at me, that small, persistent intuition that never left me alone. I pulled up the property transfer documents once more, scrolling slower this time. I'd read them a dozen times already, but my eyes caught something they hadn't before, a name buried deep in the fine print. The authorizing signature. Isolde Montgomery. My mother's handwriting. Confident, curved, unmistakable. Sitting right below the clause that transferred ownership to Seraphine. I had assumed Seraphine had orchestrated everything, the forged paperwork, the pressure, the lies. But no. It had been Mom all along. The realization didn't hit like a punch. It landed quieter, thin, precise, like the slice of paper across skin. No blood. Just breath leaving the body. I printed the form, the paper sliding warm into my hands. My pulse stayed steady. No shaking. Just purpose. I slipped the document into a folder and labeled it with the first words that came to mind. Maternal consent fraud. I stared at the label and let out a small, humorless laugh. Sometimes laughter is the only way to keep betrayal from turning you to stone. The folder sat beside my coffee cup, the ink on the title still fresh. I watched it gleam faintly in the morning light, and I thought of her voice, her warnings about family image, the years I'd spent upholding that image like it was holy scripture. They had built their legacy on my silence. I was about to ruin their architecture. By late afternoon, the Maui sun had turned gold and honey soft. I sat on the balcony, scrolling through old emails on my phone. Somewhere between spam and bank statements, I found it, one from last year. Subject line, urgent help. It was from Mom. Her words stared back at me. Your sister can't qualify for the loan without your credit. I'll make sure you're protected. Protected. The word tasted bitter now. Like salt water left too long in the mouth. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and drifted backward through memory. I was 17 again, standing in the cold hospital hallway outside my grandmother's room. The air smelled of disinfectant and impending loss. Mom had taken my hand that day, her nails digging just enough to leave little crescents in my palm. Always protect your sister, she whispered. Always. And I did. Every time. At every cost. Now, years later, staring out at the ocean, I whispered back to my reflection in the glass door, even if it kills me? The reflection didn't answer. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who had obeyed. She didn't flinch. She blinked once, slow, deliberate. That was enough. At sunset, I poured myself a glass of water and turned off every light except for the small lamp on the desk. The quiet felt staged, almost theatrical, like the room itself was waiting for something to happen. And then it did. At 7:42 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message. Aunt Cassie. She had attached a screenshot. Her text read simply, "You need to see this." I opened the image. A group chat. Mom. Seraphine. The family lawyer. I zoomed in until the screen filled my vision. Let's push Venus out quietly. She's too emotional to handle this inheritance process logically. Below it, Seraphine had replied with a single heart emoji. The lawyer's response followed, understood. For a long moment, I just stared. The letters blurred slightly, not from tears, but from exhaustion. This wasn't shock anymore. This was confirmation. The kind of truth your bones recognize long before your eyes read it. I set the phone down. Took a slow breath. Then another. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I just reached for the glass of water, drank deeply, and placed it back on the table. Then I messaged Cassie, save everything. I'm done playing nice. Her reply came almost immediately. I already did. I smiled then, a small, quiet curve of the mouth that didn't quite reach my eyes. Outside, the horizon was dissolving into darkness, the last strands of sunlight surrendering to night. They built a dynasty on silence, I whispered to no one in particular. I just pulled the first brick. The words didn't sound angry. They sounded inevitable. Like gravity. Like something that had always been coming. I gathered the printed documents from the desk, stacking them neatly, corner to corner. I slipped them into my briefcase, pressing the latch until it clicked shut. The sound of paper sliding into order was the softest victory I'd ever known. Healing doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or vengeance. It organizes. It categorizes. It waits. And when the moment comes, it moves, quietly, deliberately, with the same certainty as the tide claiming back the shore. That's the thing about the tide. It doesn't rush. It doesn't beg. It simply returns, to what was always its own. The flight back to Los Angeles landed just after dawn. The air outside the terminal carried that faint city chill that smells like exhaust and memory. I hadn't seen the skyline in weeks, but it looked the same, familiar, indifferent. As I stood in the taxi line, I realized I wasn't nervous. Whatever waited for me now couldn't unmake what I had already reclaimed. By mid-morning, I was walking through the lobby of the law firm. Polished marble floors reflected the gray light spilling through the windows. I didn't bring a lawyer. I didn't need one. My bag was heavy with the folder labeled receipts. I nodded to the receptionist. She smiled politely, unaware that I was carrying the quiet weight of truth. The air in the hallway was cold enough to raise goosebumps along my arms. At the end of the corridor, the door to the mediation room stood slightly open. I could hear muffled voices, familiar tones threaded with tension. I took a slow breath and stepped inside. Seraphine's daughter stood near the window, clutching a tablet. She looked taller than I remembered, the same brown eyes that used to light up when she saw me. Now they slid away. Mom said not to talk to you, she murmured. That's okay, I said softly. You don't have to. You're not really part of the family anymore. Her words came quick, rehearsed, like she'd been told to memorize them. I crouched to her height. My knees creaked a little. Tell your mom I said thank you, I whispered. That's the cleanest cut I've ever been handed. The girl blinked, unsure what to make of that. She shifted her weight, her shoes squeaking against the tile. Take care of yourself, I added. My voice stayed calm, gentle. Then I stood and walked past her into the boardroom. They were waiting. My mother sat at the head of the long table, spine straight, pearls glinting like armor. Seraphine sat beside her, scrolling through her phone, pretending disinterest. The family lawyer, Mr. Garrison, looked up from a folder and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Venus, he said, motioning toward the seat across from them. Thank you for coming on short notice. I wasn't given much of a choice, I replied, setting my bag on the table. Seraphine's eyes flicked up. You didn't have to come at all. I did, I said. To correct the record. I unzipped the bag and laid the folder out, spreading the contents slowly. The papers landed one by one with the sound of soft thunder, wedding contracts with my name, email threads, invoices, property records. Each document a heartbeat of the life they'd tried to erase. This isn't revenge, I said. This is record keeping. I'm not asking for love. I'm stating the truth, on paper. Mom's jaw tightened. We could have handled this privately. You mean quietly, I said. You prefer things quiet, don't you? Quiet rooms, quiet daughters. Watch your tone, she warned. I smiled slightly. I am. For once, you're hearing it. Seraphine crossed her arms. You make everything dramatic. No one stole anything from you. Families share. I slid a page across the table, property transfer paperwork with both her name and mom's signature. Families also sign their own daughter's name off a deed. That's not sharing. That's theft. The lawyer cleared his throat, glancing at Isolde for direction. Perhaps we can reach an understanding. No need to escalate. I finished for him. We passed that point when my name disappeared from every document you submitted. Isolde leaned forward. Venus, this anger doesn't suit you. You've always been the sensible one. Don't throw that away over paperwork. Paperwork is where truth lives, I said quietly. It's the only place you can't rewrite me. For a moment, no one spoke. The ticking of the clock filled the space like a second heartbeat. Then Seraphine laughed, small, brittle. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You like being the martyr. I met her eyes. No. I just stopped volunteering for the cross. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. My mother's fingers drummed against the table. Years of habit made me want to flinch at that sound. But I stayed still. Finally, I reached into my bag and pulled out one more document, sliding it toward them, Restoration of Name and Assets Agreement. The title gleamed in bold black print. This is simple, I said. You acknowledge my contribution to the house refinance and the wedding production. You restore my financial share. In return, I agree to drop all civil claims. Mr. Garrison looked surprised. That's reasonable. Seraphine scoffed. You're bluffing. I leaned back. You can call it that. Or you can call it your last chance at dignity. Her face flushed crimson. You think you're better than us? No, I said softly. Just less afraid. Isolde exhaled through her nose, eyes darting between us. Do what you want, she said finally. I'm done negotiating with ghosts. I gathered the papers calmly, placing them back in the folder. Then you'll be haunted by the truth instead. When I stepped into the hallway, Aunt Cassie was waiting on a bench outside. She stood as soon as she saw me, eyes searching my face. Well, she asked. They heard me, I said. They may not listen, but they heard me. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. That's something. We didn't hug. We never needed to. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. The screen reflected both of us, the woman who'd watched me be erased and the woman who refused to stay gone. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. They called me emotional. Turns out emotion builds memory. And I remember everything. I showed it to her. She smiled, faint but proud. Keep that one, she said. It sounds like freedom. I slipped the phone back into my bag and turned toward the elevator. My reflection in the stainless steel doors looked unfamiliar, steadier, clearer. As the doors closed, I whispered under my breath, they stole the stage. I took the mic. The words felt like breath after drowning, smooth and alive. Healing doesn't shout. It speaks, firmly, through whatever voice you thought you'd lost. The drive up the coast took less than 2 hours. I kept the windows down even when the air turned cool, letting the wind tangle through my hair. Santa Barbara looked softer than Los Angeles, cleaner lines, slower hearts. I arrived at the community center just after sunrise, the parking lot still empty except for a man unloading folding chairs near the entrance. Inside, the room smelled faintly of coffee and pine cleaner. Rows of metal chairs faced a small podium with a white banner behind it, Women and Wealth, Redefining Inheritance and Worth. I ran my fingers along the edge of the lectern, tracing small scratches in the wood. It reminded me of the desk I refinished years ago in the house that no longer belonged to me. When the organizer, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, handed me a microphone, she said, "Take your time. Speak how you need to." I nodded. My palms weren't trembling. That surprised me. As the first few attendees filed in, chatting quietly, I glanced at the screen behind me. My presentation slides were simple, black text on white background, no photos. I didn't need visuals. My story was already vivid enough. When the room settled, I took a breath. The microphone hummed faintly in my hand, like it remembered the weight of my voice. The first time I lent my sister money, I was 14. It wasn't much, just $20 I'd saved from babysitting. She promised to pay me back. She never did. A soft laugh rippled through the audience. I smiled, small and real. It sounds trivial now. But that moment taught me something. That silence has a cost. And it grows interest. The crowd leaned in, mostly women, many my mother's age. Some clutched notepads, Others simply held coffee cups as if to anchor themselves. When I turned 30, I continued, I thought I was done paying for that silence. But families have a way of sending new invoices. I paused, letting the words land. My chest felt lighter with each one. I told them how easy it is to confuse love with obligation. How women are taught to serve, to forgive, to fix what others break. Inheritance, I said slowly, isn't just property. It's belief in who you are, and whether you deserve to be named. The sentence came out softer than I expected, but it hit harder. Heads nodded. One woman in the front row mouthed the words to herself. I spent years earning a place in a story that wasn't mine, I said. I built a house, a business, a legacy, and when they took it, they left me with nothing but proof. So I learned to make peace with proof. The audience was quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels like listening, not absence. I shifted the tone, speaking not as the woman who lost, but as the woman who learned. You can write contracts with family, I said. You can speak up without guilt. You can rebuild your worth without waiting for anyone's permission. A murmur of agreement spread through the rows. I could see their faces soften, the relief of recognition, the shock of resonance. A woman near the back raised her hand. How did you find the courage to confront them? I smiled. It wasn't courage, I said gently. It was exhaustion. Courage came later, after the silence broke. Laughter broke through the room then, warm, real. I continued, healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, step by step. It sounded like paper sliding through a printer. It looked like my name, restored on a document. When I finished, there was a moment of stillness before applause. It wasn't loud. It was steady, hands meeting hands in rhythm, some wet with tears. A woman in the front row whispered as I stepped down, I needed this 10 years ago. I touched her shoulder lightly. You needed it now, I said. The organizer handed me a cup of coffee afterward, her voice trembling. That line about belief, people will remember that. I smiled. So will I. After the crowd dispersed, I walked outside. The ocean stretched across the horizon, pale blue under late morning sun. I found a bench facing the water and sat down, letting the breeze tug at my jacket. My phone vibrated once, a new message. From Aunt Cassie. They're quiet now. But I saw your talk. And I'm louder because you spoke first. I read it twice. The corners of my mouth lifted, not from triumph, but peace. No tears this time. Just stillness, like a door closing without a slam. I reached into my bag and pulled out the laminated poem, the one I'd taken from the basement months ago. The paper had softened with age, but the ink was still sharp. When I grow up, I'll be something bright. Not the shadow that hides in light. I read it aloud, just for myself. The wind caught the last line and carried it toward the sea. I folded the page carefully and slipped it back into my pocket. Not to forget. To carry it forward. I stood, the sand crunching softly beneath my shoes. Behind me, the building's glass doors reflected the banner still hanging above the stage, my name printed at the bottom, spelled correctly for once. They took the house. I kept the name. I whispered, almost like prayer, because some names aren't inherited, they're rebuilt. The breeze brushed against my face, cool and certain. Healing doesn't end. It continues, quietly, through every breath we choose to take as our own. Sometimes, the family you're born into will try to silence your story. But silence is not peace. It's in reclaiming your voice, quietly, firmly, that you begin to rebuild not just your name, but your worth. What about you? Have you ever walked away? Not out of spite, but out of self-respect? If this story moved you, subscribe for more real stories that speak where silence once lived.